Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Gramophone channel, and we are really excited tonight because we're kicking off a product launch from one of our most favorite partners and an icon in the industry. And joining me to share about that tonight is Seth Snyder of Sound United, who is the parent company of Bowers Wilkins. Seth has a ton of industry experience and knows this product very, very well. So who better to have on and help kick off one of the most exciting launches that we've had in quite some time. Seth, can you tell us a little bit about your time in the industry and then also a little history about one of the most famous speakers ever made, Bowers Wilkins?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for the glowing introduction.
Of course.
Now I have to live up to it. It's I've been with Bowers for quite some time now, and I've been selling Bowers and Wilkins and helping customers, install them in their own homes to get enjoyable listening experiences for even longer. So yeah, the Diamond series, this is a fun time for us. If only because we don't get to do it very often. It takes a lot of engineering, a long time to really build this product up to the levels that we deem worthy of being a Diamond speaker. So anytime that we get to launch a new Diamond series, a new 800 series, we're very excited about it. And it's fun to be here at Gramophone to do that.
That is awesome. So with this new Diamond series, and we're going to have some stuff for you guys explaining specifically what's new, but I want to hear it from Seth. What are some of the things that immediately on this new speaker jump out and you'd say are the improvements to really pay attention to?
Yeah, there's a lot. So why don't we just go top to bottom?
Let's do it.
That makes the most sense. The first thing is going to be the elongated tweeter body housing.
That's one of the first things I noticed.
Yeah, not only it looks so much better when it comes all the way to the back of the cabinet, particularly on this 805 D4, but it has a lot of acoustic advantages. Number one, it increases the length that back wave can travel through that tweeter, making the whole thing more efficient, which allows us to get a much more open and airy presence with our highs. It also allows us to dip down lower with that tweeter to really mesh with that mid-range crossover point a lot better, meaning you get an effortless high frequency that just sounds open and airy. Those cymbal shimmers just travel on for days. That the breath on on a female vocalist comes through nice and clear, especially up in those high frequencies where they're maybe enunciating those S sounds. All those super high frequencies just give a great depth to the actual recording that you're ever listening to. The other big thing is this big giant piece of aluminum on the top. That is an aluminum top plate. You're going to get that. And that aluminum top plate keeps the whole system nice and quiet. There's a ton of things of technology that you'll never see in this speaker. On the inside, big metal bracing where the pod for the mid-bass driver can mount into. That goes doubly true for the larger floor standing models. That this keeps the entire system nice and quiet. So you hear what you're supposed to hear, not the bad behavior of the speaker cabinet, because this is going to stay out of the way.
One thing I've noticed with my time in the industry is that speaker cabinets are really the secret sauce of the entire design.
Yep, it's important. We at Bowers, we're known for making the finest transducers that money can buy in a loudspeaker. So we're constantly trying to get our cabinets to not screw up all that hard work that we did building those transducers. Continuum mid-range cones, diamond tweeters, aerofoil bass drivers. We spend a great deal of time and resources developing those core technologies. So to make sure that cabinet keeps everything nice and quiet and allows you to hear all that effort that we put into those things is very important to us, as well as making them look absolutely gorgeous.
What you said about making the transducers, come to think of it, and this is something that's not thought of often, many speaker companies don't even make their own drivers.
Yeah.
And the thing about a Bowers product is that it is 100% Bowers.
Yeah, we're control freaks. So we want to make sure that we make them sound exactly as we want them to. And there's other advantages as you go down through the line as far as the designing of the speaker. Simple things like when you get to the crossover stage on this, we don't have many problems to solve because we designed our crossovers while we were designing the drivers that they're firing. Whereas other companies or other industries, they'll source different drivers, put them together, find all the things they got to fix. Well, we don't have to do that. Everything's nice and easy and simple because we're able to design our crossovers along with the drivers as we're building them. The result for our customers or the people who are going to be listening to speakers is a much more seamless transition between all the drivers as you work your way down through.
And isn't the 800 also famous not only for being an incredible product in and of itself, but because of the legacy that it's created in the trickle-down products that have been born from it?
Yep. The 801 was the first 800 series speakers that we ever made. It was called the 801 because it was the first speaker that we made in the 80s. And we are actually bringing that model back within the new D4 line. So there will be an 801 D4 that will be available. That was the first speaker that was deemed worthy of the 800 name. And it was the speaker that put us on the map because that was the speaker that now professionals started using. We don't have a professional line. You can buy the exact same speaker that the professionals use and use them in your living room. We manufacture to one standard. But that was the first speaker where Abbey Road then picked up our speaker and started utilizing them. There's great images of Pink Floyd standing in front of that speaker when they were recording at Abbey Road Studios. Skywalker sound. So if you've ever watched any Star Wars movies, any Avengers movies, it's all recorded and mastered and engineered on our speakers. And it's because those engineers, those people who use our speakers to develop those movies, they trust our speakers to tell them the truth about what's happening on the other side of that glass. It's great for a consumer because it never sounds any better than in the captain's chair at Skywalker when you're watching Star Wars. That's where they made it sound the way it's supposed to sound. So you can buy that exact same system from you right here at Gramophone and install that same level of quality at home. It's so cool.
That'd be like being in Star Wars.
Yeah. You don't have to eat those weird MRE meals that they have on the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, guys. Well, there's something that really cool that I want to tell you about, and then we're going to show you an excellent video put together by Bowers and Wilkins. The first thing is we're actually going to be giving away a set of PI5 truly wireless in-ear earbuds. So make sure you guys stay tuned because we're going to talk about how to do that at the end of the video. And if you don't know, these are some of the finest truly wireless buds that I've tested yet, and who would expect anything different if it's got the Bowers name on it. But now we really want to show you this incredible video put together by the engineering team at Bowers and Wilkins. And it's going to break down with great visuals a lot that has gone into each and every piece of taking already the gold standard speaker in hi-fi and making it even better in the new D4.
Personally, for me, I think 800 series has the most pressure on it because it's our flagship.
We've already got a loudspeaker range that already epitomizes kind of performance and beautiful design in its space. So it's almost like you're staring at a mountain at the start of these projects, just wondering how are you going to get to the top and how are you going to make something that's even better than you already have.
It's very high standard to start with. It's quite hard to go a little step further, but it's very exciting, especially when you see the result at the end. And you can actually start to enjoy what you've done as a team.
When you get that magical moment when you get it right and the rest of the team agree with you, that's awesome.
With most products somewhere along the line, you've got to be thinking about things like retail price or timelines or whatever else. And the thing that's remarkable with an 800 series Diamond is a lot of those issues go away.
So you start with those little inklings of how do we think we could nudge this ball forward, and then you start exploring.
It's really based on the listening experience, so try to identify pointers where you think you can bring improvement. You can try a lot of clever things that takes a long time, or you might have an idea and you can take 5 minutes and you try it out and you can hear the difference.
Certainly from my point of view, we concentrate on the driver technology first to get that right. We're able to qualify that, then we start working on what we're going to do with the new cabinet constructions, how we're going to incorporate new technologies into that.
So one of our real priorities for the fourth series of the 800 series was to be able to bring 805 and 804 into the reverse wrap that we were able to do for the headed products in the last series. So we now have a curving front baffle, which is a much prouder expression of the technology and the heritage within 800 series. But it also brings us great acoustic benefits as well. We reduce the baffling, which means we get much improved sound stages. We improve the stiffness of the cabinet, which you'll hear a massive improvement in the bass performance of 805 and 804.
We have the double copper and double silver mid-range motors, which greatly improves the current distortion, and we are able to have an even lower noise floor in the drive unit itself. We've incorporated a certain type of steel for the LF motors that's also reducing the current distortion down into the LF region as well. The HF, we have increased the acoustic volume that the driver fires into, hugely changing the resonant frequency of that driver. That being lower makes the harmonic distortion a lot lower down in frequency as well. We've reduced the compression that happens behind the dome by removing one of the magnets. We've re-optimized the motor system to do that, and that's also helping the driver to breathe more freely. Gives you more.
On the new motors for the MF, we have a copper cap we regularly use. We decided to just go for more premium silver options. On paper, it's really hard to tell how much difference it's gonna make. Well, if you just try it out, and you can see that it makes a massive difference.
We listened to it in this room for the first time.
Suddenly, just everything sounds more detailed, more open. Everything is bigger, it sounds clearer, cleaner.
The first model I actually got to hear was the 805. That relatively small speaker can still portray this amazingly vivid image, pull you so far into this musical performance.
It's quite a remarkable change from the previous series.
It's hard to pinpoint one technology that makes it better. It's all of them combined.
It's the clearest loudspeakers I've ever heard in my life.
The best thing that I'd ever heard was an 800D3 until I heard an 801D4.
You're able to hear the fine detail all the way around your head now.
You're hearing a piece of music that you genuinely knew, and suddenly there's another layer, or suddenly there's something else within it that's unearthed.
Once you're in this room with a setup like that, it's just an experience in itself.
The speakers, as big as they are, kind of go away. And what you hear is the performers or the performance in the room.
You can play rock music, you can play classical pieces or anything like that. It goes really low, really clean. You get the impact, you get everything.
It wipes the floor with the old one. We were very excited.
So that is a very professional and excellent video detailing every little detail of that design process. But that does give me a couple questions that I want to ask you. Watching that, seeing them break down how these are put together, what really fascinates me is in this mid-range driver, at least in the tower speakers, if I recall,
Right.
is an entirely new suspension system. And apparently that's a very big deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, if only in age alone, that is our new Biomimetic Suspension system. So it's a new spider that we use on our three-way designs. We would use it in this, but these need a bit of excursion in order to get those low frequencies. But we filed the patent for that particular product about 17 years ago. So it's been that long in the making. What it does, essentially, the old cloth spider. Let's talk about that first. The old cloth spider, about this big, little yellow piece of cloth that just holds the voice coil to make sure everything's centered and playing nicely. That acted like a little tiny speaker inside the cabinet. So as the speaker is trying to effortlessly push sound waves into the room, there's this other little speaker behind it hitting the back of it, causing a low level of distortion. We never really measured it before. That's the great thing about diamonds. Like these problems, we didn't know they were there because the measurement equipment that we needed to find them didn't exist yet. So now with the new measurement equipment that we have, we're able to see what was happening inside there. The new spider creates absolutely no sound. And within the mid-range band, the difference in sound inside can be as much as 80 decibels. So it is not
80 decibels.
Yeah. Of course, depending on the frequency, I think around 1K, it's about an 80 decibel difference. So that is a ton of sound that was going on inside the cabinet, causing problems, distortion that your brain could decipher, and just all of a sudden things just didn't sound quite real enough that we just removed. So the mid-range presence and clarity and detail on this new diamond line, particularly in the three ways, is just nuts because of that one little tiny piece.
80 decibels is an extraordinary number.
It's
like,
not small.
that's quite the claim.
Yeah.
And impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, one thing I noticed about this new suspension, it sounds like it was manufactured by Skynet, first of all, which is kind of cool.
It's some high tech. But that's one of the advantages of manufacturing your own drivers. We let the engineers name things and they come up with cool names.
But the idea of it is, when I was looking at that diagram for the first time, I was like, that kind of looks like a muscle almost.
Yeah, it's actually, if you look back at like the first electrodynamic drivers that were ever made, it's very similar to the spider system that they used in those original designs that didn't work before pretty much everyone switched to the cloth spider. We just finally found a way to improve on that design.
And I think that's got to be one of the most significant changes, at least in mid-range drivers, that I can think of in the industry for quite some time. I mean, the spider is just, it's the spider. It's always been the same.
It's always been a piece of cloth. It was cloth in all of our speakers for years. We didn't know we had a problem until we knew we had a problem. And then we had a reason to design something to fix that problem. And the result is just a much more transparent mid-range with it covers any three-way design. Again, the only reason the 805 doesn't have it is because this mid-bass driver has to
push a little further.
Yeah, it's got to produce low frequencies. But every other speaker, including the center channels, will have that. So think about how important mid-range is to vocal clarity when you're using it for theater purposes. I mean, it's an important piece, and it's a great story to tell.
I've got one more mid-range question for you.
Yes.
Because this has always kind of stuck out to me and baffled me just a little bit.
Only imagine what it will be.
So I've noticed in the three-ways, basically all the towers,
yes,
that the mid-range surround almost looks like it's not even there.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on with it?
I thought you were going to ask me about what continuum is, and I was like, I don't know. It's under lock and key. It's like the secret spices at KFC. No
Kevlar, but better almost.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a woven pattern. But all right, so that surround that's almost not there, that design we call a fixed suspension transducer. So what it does is it reduces standing waves that exist on the driver. The easiest way I've found to be able to explain what this is if you look at a two-way design. Two-way design has to create bass, so it has this rubber surround around there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of other companies use that. If you think of the speaker as one of those little blue plastic kiddie pools, all right, yeah. Fill it up with water, drop a pebble into the middle, the wave goes out to the edge of the pool. What happens when it hits the edge?
Just collapses on that.
Collapses,
on that ring.
Comes back in. Well, sound is one little pebble drop one after another, 1, 2, 3, right behind it. So when that wave collapses back inside, it hits that next wave and causes all
getting
interference.
Yep.
So what that little ring around the edge is a gasket. So when in that regard, that FST is more like an infinity pool that you see in, like Beverly Hills. As you drop that pebble come in, that wave goes out to the edge and just rolls off the edge, gets absorbed by that ring, and doesn't have a chance to come back in and screw up what's supposed to be happening on the driver.
So in short, it's designed to minimize that blend of constructive and destructive interference that we would perceive as distortion.
Yes, it just gives you that clear, open sense. I've said it before, even in this in this broadcast, you hear what you're supposed to hear, not the bad behavior of the actual driver, because it's coming onto a nice, quiet, still surface on that driver.
I feel like half the things that mankind tries to do is just mitigating Newton's third law.
It really is. I mean, it's such a strange thing when you talk about it, because it's full of oxymorons. Like this continuum cone, it's the quietest driver we've ever made. So it's a quiet driver in a loudspeaker. Like it's like an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense. Like jumbo shrimp. Well, so what I mean is that it plays the frequency that you want it to play. And especially with the continuum cone, it's so fast that it plays the frequency you want to play, and then it shuts up and gets out of the way. So that next frequency can come onto a nice, quiet surface. And then once it's there, that FST ring absorbs it when it should be dissipating off the driver.
With the advent of the D4, first time I heard them, almost immediately, I said to myself, this is now one of the fastest dynamic speakers I've heard.
Yeah, speed. I mean, you hear what you're supposed to hear. And then it unleashes that clarity and that detail and that presence. So things come from within the soundstage where they're supposed to come from. You get depth, height, all types of fun details. And then on top of that, all the advances we made in the lower frequencies give you that presence and that rumble in your seat that, makes it fun. So it's a lot of fun.
I promise you guys I'm going to stop talking about mid-range now. Can you tell what I really like in my speakers? Let's talk about the diamond tweeter real quick.
Cool.
I remember seeing also that other than the new elongated body that it's built into, that I believe it was on the 801, has a little something different going on in the wiring. I think we're using silver now, correct?
That's actually in the mid-range.
That's in the mid-range.
Yeah, the mid-range
I'm
is
sorry,
using
I still stuck on the
double silver.
mid-range.
But no, let's talk the elongated tweeter body, because we kind of touched on it. The actual shape of it helps us get a little bit more efficiency out of it. So it has those advantages. Along with that, because it became so much more efficient, we were able to use less magnets. So we were able to use only 2 magnets instead of the 3 that we used on the D3s. Along with that, we took a look at the motor housing and everything that's plugged into it. On the inside, built into that motor system, we played around with the venting on this. So not only is it more efficient, not only can we produce more with better clarity, but we can utilize those vents and the pattern that we use within those vents in order to give a much more open and airy presence to just kind of further improve on honestly, one of the few things that we didn't change from the D3s to the D4 models. The Diamond Dome is still the same Diamond Dome. Not because we didn't try to improve it, just because we haven't found anything that works better yet.
But everything surrounding it has improved.
Yeah, everything from the front to the back. And that's really the big story to tell, because it was a bit of a shock to the system. If you remember, we went from the second generation of the Diamonds, the D2, to the D3, where we introduced continuum and reverse wraps and all of that. That's another thing we didn't bring up. The reverse wrap on the 805s and the 804s is new. So you'll get that reverse wrap to reduce that effect of diffraction, that boxy feeling that you get from a box speaker.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember when we went D2 to D3, the D3 drops and it's like, this is the same product.
I know,
like, it's completely different.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it doesn't look like it at face value, because it does keep a lot of the design language, but really everything inside and a little bit of what you can see here, this is a completely different speaker.
Yeah, the amount of metal that's inside the speaker is nuts. Each individual pod is mounted into an aluminum brace that keeps everything, all those resonances that are created by bass drivers, mid bass cones, like it keeps everything from working its way into the cabinet. And then eventually those resonances working their way into the tweeter. More metal on the top to keep things nice and quiet, as well as, we get the advantage to put this Connolly leather inlay. So this is the same.
And it feels great.
It's awesome. It's the same leather that you would get in an Aston Martin or Rolls Royce. It's what the Queen's carriage is all. Yeah, it's an age-old English company. So an English speaker of this caliber deserves the best English leather the money can buy. So on the black and dark wooden models, you'll get a black Connolly leather, and on the white and the walnut finishes, you'll get a gray.
Don't get me started on that walnut finish.
It's sick.
I could go on and on.
It looks good. It's my favorite finish by far. Yeah, we try to have something for everybody though. So if it's not your flavor, we have a couple of the finishes for you as well.
Awesome. All right, guys. So that's a little bit of the breakdown of the theory of how you build an incredible English loudspeaker. But now we want to show you what that process actually looks like. And if you ask me, this is one of the fun parts. Check out the factory.
Hello and welcome to Worthing and the south coast of the United Kingdom. This is our Dale Road factory and this is the home of our 800 series Diamond. Today we're going to go behind the scenes and we're going to show you some of the technology, the craft and most importantly the passion that goes into the making of the world's best performance loudspeakers. It all begins with this. This is our basic level raw material. It's a single sheet of beech. Our cabinets are made from multiple layers. What we're doing is using the inherent pliability of beech to our advantage. That allows us to curve it. And at the same time, we're using multiple layers of beech arranged in an alternating grain structure. And we use that alternating grain structure with the grains running in different directions to add that stiffness. It's essentially a bit like an engineered wooden floor. Now each layer of beech is separated by a layer of dry glue. It's a new process we've introduced for the latest generation of 800 series Diamond.
So layer of wood, layer of dry glue, layer of wood, layer of dry glue, and so on. So all those layers of wood and glue and or veneer go together, and then we heat the whole thing and put it onto a forming press. The forming press is a hugely powerful hydraulic system that basically pushes down onto the wood and curves it into the right construction. At the same time, we heat the whole thing up to somewhere between 135 and 140 degrees Celsius. Roughly 20 to 25 minutes later, we have a completed loudspeaker cabinet, which is ready to come out of the forming press and go onwards to be machined. So after we've taken that cabinet and taken it from the press tool, the next thing is to bring it round here to one of these. This is a 5-axis CNC cutter, a robot cutter. And of course what we're trying to do there is cut away all of those rough edges that you saw just now being formed on the press tool to create something that we can build into a complete loudspeaker cabinet. Now, it's really important at this stage that the cuts that we make are as precise and as accurate as we possibly can make them, because what we're trying to do is take that form, that wrap form, and join it up to other elements, including tops, bottoms, and internal component parts. They could be made of wood, they could be made of metal. So the precision of the fit is all important. Our accuracy of the cutting is plus or minus 0.2 of a millimeter. After the loudspeaker has been taken out of the CNC cutter, the next stage is to bring it to one of these, which is a device we call the spreader. What the spreader does is allows us to open up the cabinet ever so slightly, just enough to be able to slide in the internal components, and in particular the matrix assembly, which we use to reinforce the cabinet in all directions. So the spreader will grab the sides, slightly open it up, we slide the completed matrix assembly, glue it in place, close the cabinet back up together, and then it will sit here under pressure for 2 hours. After that, it will come off and sit for a further 2 hours just to completely cure off, and at that point what we've created is our completed loudspeaker cabinet. So the next step, once you've taken the cabinet and got it together, is to bring it in here to the sanding area, where we're going to work to make sure that we get everything we need for a perfect finish. There are two parts to this process. First, we use a very sophisticated robot sander. That works on two things: the pre-programmed coordinates that it needs to know to work on a specific model. So, for example, an 804 as against an 802 D4. They obviously have different shapes, and the robot needs to understand that. But it's also going to use a force feedback sensor. That makes sure that it reaches out and touches effectively the surface area of the cabinet and never overpresses at any given point. It's constantly monitoring the amount of feedback it gets as it runs its sanding disc over the surface area of the cabinet. After it's been off the robot sander, it will always come through human process for final checking. The operators here, very skilled guys, will go through all of the work the robot's just done, make sure it's 100%, and if needs be, finish any fine areas and details by hand. Our paint process is applied by robot. We've got an automated paint spray robot you can see behind me, plus this oven chamber around here. What this is doing is moving the products through the paint process and then taking them back round through the oven, a stoving oven, which is baking them in each instance before they then come back round to receive more coats of paint. The paint robot will apply 4 coats in the first instance. Then we're going to take these and what's called flatten them back to get them really smooth, to remove any surface imperfections. Then they'll come back in here again and receive further 4 layers of paint, in this particular instance on this black model. So 8 coats of paint in total. After it leaves here, it will then go into our warehouse where it will sit for 2 weeks. And we do that to allow the paint to cure off, to become really hard. Only then can we machine polish it. So this is our polishing area. What we do here is take the cabinets that have been finished and prepared and bring them across to produce that high gloss sheen that's necessary for a piano gloss back finish. That takes 2 processes. First, we're going to put them into the robot polisher. That operates very similarly to the robot sander that you saw before. The difference, of course, is instead of a sanding head, it's using a polishing compound head instead. It takes around 70 minutes for a cycle time, after which the operators here will take the product out of the robot polisher and finish it by hand. Again, very similar to what you saw in the sanding area. So this is one area of the factory where we can't show you all the details, and this is the reason why. This is where we produce our famous continuum cone. What we're doing here is taking the raw material and turning it into a finished loudspeaker drive unit. The precise details of how remain a closely guarded secret, but the key point is the finished cone will leave here, will go onto our drive unit assembly line before going forward into our 800 series diamond loudspeakers. So this is the tweeter assembly line. What we're doing here is taking the diamond dome, and then we're going to be joining that into the surround, the voice coil, the diaphragm mounting plate, and the magnet. All very small, precise detail work that requires a lot of specific skill. That's then joined into the solid body tweeter assembly, which is milled from a single piece of aluminium. The whole thing then joined up as a complete diamond dome tweeter assembly is tested before it's brought downstairs to the final product assembly line. What we do here is take all of the high quality capacitors, resistors and the other component parts that go into our crossovers and assemble them exclusively by hand. So everything's hand soldered. Each individual complete board is tested, and then the whole thing's put together onto one of these, which is the crossover spine. That whole thing again is then tested before it's packed and taken down to a final product assembly line. This part of the factory is all about what we call by hand process. It's using individuals rather than machines to create that perfect combination of finish and quality on the products that we're working on. In this particular case, the turbine head that you can see here, this is a raw metal component as it arrives in the factory. It's going to be first sanded and prepared, then it's going to be painted by hand in the chamber you can see behind me, and later it's going to again be polished by hand to create the ultimate finish before it goes downstairs to our final production line. One of the things you'll notice as you go down the final product assembly line is none of the operators are wearing gloves. Now that's deliberate. In fact, what we do is encourage people to remove jewellery. If they have wedding rings, they have to tape them up to make sure they can't possibly damage or mark the product. But all the same, human skin is actually a really good way of handling a product and making sure that you can't drop it. Of course, it does deposit fingerprints in the process, but all we do at the very end is clean those off before the product's finally packed. One of the key differences between the wooden cabinets and the painted cabinets is the wooden cabinets are created right from the start as pairs. So the veneers that we use are book matched left to right. They travel around the whole factory from the first moment of creation all the way through to being packed as paired loudspeakers. So here we are, we've come to the end of our journey. This is one of our final product assembly lines. From here, what we're going to do is bring together all of the processes that you've seen as we've gone around the factory together, all of those different elements, those component parts, and of course those completed, finished and polished cabinets, and we're going to turn it into a finished, complete loudspeaker. All that remains is to pack it into the box, take it to the warehouse, and we can ship another Bowers Wilkins 800 series diamond loudspeaker on to yet another happy customer.
Well, how about the how about that factory tour, everybody? I don't know about you, but as far as I can see, that's got to be one of the most detail-oriented and focused processes that I've pretty much ever seen. And I've got some questions for you about some of those details because that looks incredible.
Go ahead.
The first thing that I noticed in that, and I'm sure all you did as well, this cabinet. What is this, like 10 layers of carefully selected alternating patterns of beach beyond just the usual MDF we see in most speakers?
Yeah, it depends on model. Sometimes it's usually quite a bit more. It's upwards of like 24, depending on each model. But yeah, we do
24.
that because we're able to achieve a couple things with those Number one, they're flexible naturally. When we alternate the grain patterns, though, they lose that flexibility, and then we put it back into it when we put them into those big giant vices. Those giant vices, I don't remember how many metric tons per inch they give, but it is a great deal of pressure, and we also introduce heat. In between each one of those layers is a special resin that we use that when it's introduced to heat, it changes the structure electrically inside but essentially binds it to the wood, and it turns into almost like a glass. It gives us maximum stiffness, so we get the advantage of a curved cabinet without the disadvantage whenever you kerf a cabinet or mill it out from a solid piece of timber. It gives the advantages of reducing those points, those weak points on a cabinet, which are the corners, while giving us that effect of also that lack of diffraction and to get that open sound stage. The nice thing about Bowers is that in this industry, we are industry leaders, which allows us to buy some pretty fancy toys. So each one of those machines is about a $1.5 million machine. We have several of them, and it allows us to build to a standard that if other companies try to build to that same standard, they wouldn't even be able to turn a profit. So we can be kind of bullies in that regard. But that's good for the consumer. That's good for the person who's going to buy the speakers. They get a higher level of product.
And they get the best value for their dollar, since you're controlling all of that and not paying extra yourselves to outsource it, and therefore passing that expense on to the consumer.
Exactly. We try to make as much as we can in-house. One of the only things that we don't make in-house, because we just don't have the ability to do it. Whenever we make our tweeter body housing and the mid-range housing, these housings are solid aluminum, so they're actually milled out to like the same way you'd mill out an engine block for a race car. We mill out the tweeter body housing, and we actually mill out the entire mid-range enclosure from a solid block of aluminum. So that's solid aluminum for the same reason we talked about earlier of keeping that cabinet quiet. It's worth the expense, but there's companies that do that for us, but everything else is done in-house.
And that aluminum, correct me if I'm wrong, is like at least an industrial, if not like aircraft grade, correct?
It's not too dissimilar from what you'd get in an engine block for a race car. It's
the real
aluminum.
stuff.
It's real aluminum. So has tons of anti-resonance properties. The tweeter body housing, just based on the fact it's aluminum, acts as a great heat sink, so it keeps everything nice and cool. So you'll get more longevity out of the tweeter number one. And for me, he plays louder, longer. So yeah, it's it all types of advantages, but they're all performance based advantages, not just fancy looks. They have an acoustic advantage.
They do make for fancy looks, though.
Yeah. And that's one of the questions I get a lot with these speakers is, why do they look like that? Why is that turbine head on the top? And it's because that shape has acoustical advantages for creating that speaker that just disappears in the room. So you hear your music, not the box.
I always love that it was called the turbine head, because it's got the jet engine kind of look to it.
If you look at, if you take the driver out, it's got these fins on the inside that brace it. That's actually one of the advantages we made from the D3 to the D4. We found that we didn't know existed before because we didn't have the measurement equipment. We found slight resonances in those fins. They were resonating like a tuning fork almost. So you get twice as many or up to 3 times as many tuned mass dampeners to keep that whole system quiet, as well as a matting material inside in order to keep those fins super quiet. So you get the advantage of them, which is structural integrity of the actual turbine head, without any of the disadvantages that we didn't know existed in D3.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, when you look at that turbine head, you think jet engine, which is like what? The peak of its kind, right? High tech.
Yep.
And Bowers and Wilkins is about as high tech as it gets in speakers,
yeah,
too.
They're fun speakers. I mean, and that's really why we do it. We go through these pain points of designing the most high tech speakers on the market, because at the end of the day, we want to have fun, and they are a ton of fun to own.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you about that.
Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned this multiple times. New measurement equipment. I think I've heard you say that like 3 times. What that tells me is that Bowers is not only listening with their ears, which first and foremost we should as audiophiles, and we want to enjoy this, but there's some serious science going on here.
Yeah, there is a human element to tuning any Bowers and Wilkins speaker in general. There is a human element to that. But
as there should be.
Of course. But finding the problem, hearing a problem, and being able to pinpoint what it is sometimes very difficult. So we invest in measurement equipment, like, for instance, finite element analysis. It allows us to critically evaluate what's happening on each individual aspect of the speaker. So we will measure using laser interferometry around really every aspect of the speaker, from the plinth in an 801 to the continuum comb to the actual diamond dome, so that we can see what's happening structurally at a variety of a bunch of different frequencies and pinpoint problems and solve them in the most effective way possible. So whenever I talk about, problems that we didn't know existed, we're continually investing in those measurement equipment so we continue to nail down those problems. So Andy earlier in one of the videos said the best thing that he had ever heard was an 800 D3 until he heard an 801 D4. We're continually pushing that down the road. And now we can confidently say that the 801 D4, based on all that measurement and based on that human element, the 801 D4 is the finest loudspeaker that we've ever made.
That's saying something.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's a fun line to own, to play. You should, if it's in your driving distance, you should definitely come to Gramophone and listen to them. They're set up and ready to play and ready to get loud. So
Now, I got to ask you this. 'Cause
Sure.
You said the finest loudspeaker you ever made. Keeping up with even the legendary Nautilus.
right? That is the question that I get all the time, because the Nautilus outprices the 801 D4 by, what, $25,000.
Mhm.
So the Nautilus exists. The best, analogy I can think of is like, if you think Corvettes. Grew up with Corvettes in my family. You can go out and you can buy that brand new mid-engine Corvette, and it's going to be the highest performing product that they've ever made. Or you can buy that 1967 LT1. It's not going to perform the same level as the new Corvette, but it's a completely different experience. That Nautilus, as an art piece alone, stands up to the test of time. We haven't changed anything on that since it was released in 1993. It's literally, I think we changed a Molex connector on the crossover, and that was it. So it is literally a moment in time. And that speaker completely changed the entire hi-fi industry. I mean, there was nothing like that had ever been made before. So customers come in and seek out that speaker, and we still sell quite a bit of them to customers who want a piece of that history, that piece of that hi-fi history. Who want a true art piece that they can listen to. So there are advantages, but if you're like me and you're a full propeller head and you just want the best sounding thing that Bowers and Wilkins
Go
has ever
fast. Sound good.
made, yep, 801 D4 is the best speaker that we have ever made.
That is awesome. And I got to say, just from my personal experience, the D3 was a great speaker. Occasionally, though, I thought it could get just a touch sibilant. The D4 comes along, and I'm like, I could listen to these all day. Like, these are so balanced.
Yep. We made so many changes when we went from D2 to D3. It feels like this time now the engineers have had the time to sit down and really refine all those dramatic changes from the D3 when they get into the D4 now. So they brought in that new spider, the new biomimetic suspension system for the mid-range cone. That elongated tweeter body has to make it a little bit more efficient. The phase plugs on the bass drivers, along with the new steel plates that go into that motor system. I mean, just a tremendous amount more bass, more fun in the bass drivers. I mean, they're it just everything top to bottom has improved sonically.
The new the new 803s sound almost like the old 802s because the bass got that much.
We had them the other day in your golf simulator, and they just ripped, man. They were so much fun. And that's a fun speaker. At $20,000 for repair, it is in no way an inexpensive speaker, but in a perverse way, it's a great value, because if you buy an 803 D4 from Bowers and Wilkins, from Gramophone with Bowers and Wilkins, if you buy that speaker, you're getting every single core technology that we have. As you move on like up the line to the 802 and the 801, you'll get better crossover systems. You'll get better motor systems. You'll get higher grade capacitors in the crossovers. Like, there will be advantages, as well as just a bigger cabinet and a more robust speaker. But you'll get a turbine head. You'll get a reverse wrap cabinet. You're going to get tweeter. You're going to get everything that we know how to do at the lowest cost possible. Even
versus the larger siblings, it doesn't feel like the 803 has been intentionally held back, and it hasn't.
Yep, it's a fantastic speaker. Size wise, that's one of the things that's come up in the past, though. Like, size wise, the 801 is not that much bigger. So if it's within your budget and within your space, I mean, the 801 is definitely worth every penny more. But if it's not within that budget, or if you do have a serious space constraint, the 803 is an awesome option.
It really is. I've heard it multiple times now, and I can tell you, yes.
On display at Gramophone.
Yes, it is. Come see it. But the cool thing about Bowers, we've been talking about the 800s the whole time because this is what we're launching. But there's one other product launch that we need to talk about. That's another kind of somewhat famous Bowers and Wilkins product too. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Bowers actually has a history with lighter than aircraft. Or let me show you. The Zeppelin.
The black pill.
The black pill.
Yeah, no, the Zeppelin is
the blimp that doesn't fly.
The Zeppelin is a project that we brought out on years ago. This is from when I was still on a sales floor. At the time the first Zeppelin came out, the next best thing was essentially a clock radio from a television manufacturer. That was the best little point speaker that you could get. And when this came onto the market back then, people thought we were nuts, but customers went nuts for this product. It's a single point speaker. You used to dock your iPod on the front. That's a thing of the past. Now everything's wireless. You can AirPlay to it, and it utilizes our core technology. So you get 600 series level tweeters, decoupled double dome aluminum tweeters. You get FST, remember the FST we're talking about? You get that in the mid range, and it's a true
in a
stereo.
smart speaker.
In a smart speaker, it's an awesome piece. Set it in a place that's where you want to listen to music, and you can go right from this. You are going to be able to use our music streaming app as well.
Perfect, like on these.
Yep, exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, with these that application, that's even a different application. That's a level of control that you can get, so that simple things of being able to connect your wireless headphones to multiple devices easily without getting into the settings. I mean, it's just a seamless, easy way to interact with the product.
And so earlier we mentioned that Bowers uses a little bit of trickle down on all their products. FST, same thing in the 800 diamonds.
Yep.
You find in a sub $1,000 smart speaker from Bowers Wilkins.
Yeah, that's our commitment to the way we build loudspeakers. We don't have a B team of engineers. The exact same engineers that you just saw in those videos are that build the finest loudspeakers on the planet, are the same exact engineers that build those headphones. So whether it's a $200 product or a $60,000 pair of Nautilus speakers, we manufacture and engineer to the same standard.
And you don't have an office of guys being like, when do I get to move up to working on the 800s?
No. They all out of that Southwater research facility in England. They manufacture to that same standard.
That is some awesome stuff. And I can tell you guys already, the new Zeppelin is awesome. It makes probably some of the deepest bass that I've yet heard in a smart speaker.
It's silly.
And I'm going to have a full review of it eventually coming. So stay tuned for that. But now we've got some questions that got submitted, and I want to be able to take your guys' questions and also post those to Seth as well while we've got him, because this is the B&W expert. All right. From Bruce F. asks, what is your personal favorite innovation from B&W? I guess we can both answer that. I'll start with you.
Oh, man, that is hard. I think Continuum changed everything for me. I just never heard a mid-range cone that was just so open and present without attacking you. It did things that I didn't. It unleashed pieces of within the music that I love, and just allows you to hear them in a brand new way. It's cliche in this industry, but I have never heard an advancement when we went from the aramid fibers that we used in the other models up to the Continuum models that we use in a lot of our models now, from 600 series, 700 series, our architectural items. We use a lot of Continuum. That really opened the doors for a level of clarity that we hadn't even come close to before. That's definitely my favorite. This year, that new Spider is awesome.
Yeah. Go figure, again, a mid-range innovation.
I know. I'm a metalhead. I've done this like 4 times. I like guitars. I like them loud and I like them clear. And mid-range, it's every part of the music that you're going to listen to. It's piano, it's vocals, it's gunfire in movies.
Yes.
Mid-range is important. You hear every element of this cone, and there's tons of advancements on that.
When it comes to instruments, guitar has always been my favorite, more so on the acoustic side, but same story. Mm-hmm. That and the human voice. And yeah, you get the mid wrong, you get the voice wrong. It's all wrong.
Yeah, something just doesn't feel real. It feels phony. These feel real.
I got to say, I think my personal favorite is right here, the new tweeter design, because it took my one complaint, sometimes a little too sibilant, and now it is gone.
Yeah, I think that's I think what happens this round is that length allows this tweeter to dip down lower, which makes that crossover point between the mid-range and the tweeter much more seamless. So you don't get any harshness. It's nice and smooth and detailed.
Awesome. Yeah, those are our favorites right there. We got any others?
We just named like half of them.
Pretty much. It's just really just what's your favorite in all of it?
I stand by my Continuum.
From Abby Kite, can you tell me about the different finishes available? Well, that's one of the best parts.
Yeah.
Really the one you need to know about is the walnut, but
Yeah. So in front of you here, this is the rose nut. It is a stained walnut to give a kind of a cherry wood, rosewood type of finish, with obviously much more sustainability. And that will come with a slightly textured black Connolly leather top. If you get the piano gloss black, the piano gloss black also comes with a black Connolly leather top, but it's a smooth to match the smooth finish. If you get a rose nut finish, it will have a gloss black head. If you get a headed model like an 803 or an 802 or an 801. If you jump into the white speakers will come with it's a satin white, and it will be a smooth gray, very light gray Connolly leather top. The white headed models will have a gloss white head. When you get into the walnut, which is the newest and it's my favorite too, that will be obviously a walnut finish, and it's a light walnut that'll match a variety of different shades of walnut. That's always a true thing with walnut. It will fit in with most of the shades, even if it's a little bit of contrast. That's not a bad thing. But that will have a gray top as well. But because it's a textured wood, it will have a slightly textured, and it's a slightly textured leather top, and it'll be a gray top. The head will be a kind of a gunmetal gray top, and the tweeter body, that's the big one. It'll be an anodized silver tweeter on the top that just looks awesome.
That's got almost like a polished look to it, right?
Yeah, it's like a piece of jewelry on top of the speaker. It's fantastic.
I cannot get enough of the walnut.
Yep.
It's too good.
Yeah. And if you're not into the headed models, if that's a little too aesthetically forward for you, the 804 is an absolutely beautiful piece, particularly in walnut. It looks great.
And especially the new one. Like even that looks even better.
Yeah, it's awesome.
From Jerry R. Will Gramophone have the 800 series available for Christmas? Basically, get your orders in. Bowers is doing an excellent job at getting a brand new product already out on the market. And we have been fortunate to get some, as you can see here today. But all I can really say about that right now, get the order in. Let me also ask you just what's been your experience on the back end with orders for a brand new product.
Well, if you look out your cabin window, you'll see the world is still on fire. So we're still working with that.
Just about.
With that slight issue. We're doing our best. And in the world of hi-fi, we are the 800-pound gorilla. So we're able to move at a pace that other companies who operate in this caliber of speakers aren't. You have our solemn promise that we're working as quickly as possible to get as many of these products in. One of the things to keep in mind is that, the curing process on an 800 Diamond is going to be like 3 weeks. So it takes a great deal of time just to make the product in general. I have seen the warehouses. They look like Indiana Jones, but we're getting them as fast as we can, particularly to our friends at Gramophone.
So a fair amount is ready to go. Of course, we just need to get it over here because supply chain and stuff like that.
But
I can tell you guys this, we have seen products start to roll in, so it is coming. I can at least tell you the prognosis is not terrible the way it is for much of the industry.
But your advice is correct. Get your orders in quick because there is a queue. We want to make sure you get your speakers as fast as possible.
Very good. From Sherry S. Can I trade in my older B&W speakers for the 800s? You absolutely can, and we would love to help you with that.
I always look forward to seeing those trade-ins when they come in.
Oh, yeah.
Like little moments
Little
of my
bits
past.
of history.
Yeah.
From L&W, what differentiates Bowers sound from other audio manufacturers?
That's such a tricky question.
Very tricky. I get where you're going for there, though.
It's a good one. As far as the characteristics of the sound, I mean, we definitely have our own unique sound, particularly mid-range. There's a human element to that. What I usually tell people is, you should come and listen to them because everyone hears a little bit differently, and you got to find your flavor, so to speak. But over 200 recording studios, professional recording studios in the world, choose Bowers and Wilkins speakers to do those recordings. Over 90% of classical music ever recorded is recorded on Bowers and Wilkins speakers. So it's a type of sound that is trusted to give an accurate representation of whatever it is that you're listening to. That's our goal is not to have a particular type of sound. Our goal is to stay out of the way.
Gotcha. And I say myself that my experience of Bowers has just been, if I had to try to give a answer for the sake of the live stream, that Bowers leans very detailed, but relatively neutral, and
Things just go
just
away,
straight,
don't
really just accurate. That's how I would put it.
they tell the truth. Yeah.
All right, so that's it for the questions, it looks like. So now, guys, we want to tell you about that contest that I mentioned at the beginning for the PI5s. If you want to enter to win these, totally free, and I do have to mention this is not sponsored by YouTube in any way. This is just a Gramophone thing. Go on over to skybygramophone.com, and you'll see in the top right corner that there's a little link you can click on, and it will drop down a menu, put your email in that, and that's how you can enter. To tell you a little bit about this product, the PA5 is probably one of the best truly wireless buds that I've tested yet. You also see that I've tested their big brother, the PI7, as well on the Gramophone channel. Basically, these versus everything else, they just have a better level of detail. And go figure, I just mentioned that the sound signature of Bowers and Wilkins, in my opinion, seems to be detail, and that holds true here. Versus almost everything else, there's just that little bit extra that get closer to what it would be like to have a really high-end wired IEM on your head, but to do it wirelessly. They have great battery life, and the built-in charging case also has a little trick up its sleeve that nobody else is doing right now, at least to my knowledge, which is that you can plug a cable into it and actually use them in a pseudo-wired mode. That gives you expanded usability beyond any other product in the class. You're going to want to sign up for them.
These we have a huge portfolio of products, and like as a parent, you're not supposed to have favorite children, but I use these things every day, and they're fantastic. I love the PI5s, and the PI7s are the next, so that I can get that wireless transmission from the case to headphones, which is great on planes if you want to plug into the screen on the front. These when you say great battery life, this is 24 hours. This is the only, you charge this once and you're good to go for the entire day. It's like 6 hours on the buds, and then with the case you can get a full 24 hours of playback throughout the day.
And that's pretty impressive, because I think the industry average is 4, best case scenario for others 5. To get a true 6,
yeah,
that's good.
And if you take a look at the measurement on those drivers and these products, they're not normal driver sizes because we make them, whereas other companies buy the drivers off the shelf. These are our drivers that we designed in an earbud. So even our earbud headphones, we are still a transducer company at heart.
Genuine through and through.
All the way through.
All right, guys. So one more time, remember, skybygramophone.com, where you can enter. The link will be up at the top right corner. And also on Sky, you can find many other excellent Bowers & Wilkins products as well. So that's going to be pretty much a wrap for the live stream. So Seth, thank you so much for being here and for answering all the questions that I know I could not.
It was my pleasure. Anytime I get to come to this beautiful showroom, I'm all giddy. I love this place. You guys do a great job.
And anytime that you come down to this beautiful showroom, I'm happy because we get to hang out and talk about audio, which really, what do two audiophiles really want to do more, whether they work in the industry or not? Just talk about audio. So, guys, thank you so much for being here. Before you go, don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on almost everything: Facebook, Instagram, Howls, Twitter, you name it. We'll also have some links in the description so you can easily sign up for that. And make sure you subscribe to the Gramophone YouTube channel, because we've got a lot of new content coming out for you guys. And we're doing some cool new things with our format that I think is going to be a lot of fun and that you will enjoy. So one more time, thank you for being here. And as always, be seeing you.